the etiquettes of istinja. Istinja is to cleanse oneself from the filth that comes out from the private parts. So you say wajibul istinja. Istinja is wajib, compulsory. Min kulli ainin, from every ain. Ain is a substance, any form of substance. Mulawasatin, that what you call it is at the body, that stain the body. Kharijatin minas sabilain, and this any substance comes out from sabilain. Sabilain goes back to the two private parts, the front and the back. La rihin. So when you say ain, what is the opposite of ain? When we say a wind, for example, the wind istinja is not any wajib. Istinja is not wajib. So with regard to liquid and solid, then it is wajib to do istinja. So this is what is meant by substance. La rihin. So farting doesn't necessitate istinja. Wadudatin, a worm that comes out from the anus. If a worm comes out from the anus and it is not accompanied by any filth, then istinja is not wajib. Wa hasatin, likewise, hasa is a small stone, pebbles. If pebbles come out from the anus, for example, and since this is something that is pure in itself, and it is not influenced by any filth that accompanies it, then istinja is not wajib. Wa ba'ratin bila rutubah, and likewise this solid that comes out from the feces that comes out from the anus, and there is no wetness, without wetness. If it is dry and it doesn't have any stain on the outer part of the body, then istinja is not wajib. So here the author is mentioning about when does istinja becomes wajib. So istinja becomes wajib and it must be a substance, and it has effect on the body parts, meaning it has any wetness in it. It is not any wind. Wind does not necessitate istinja. And likewise, any pure substances like stones and worms, which is not any accompanied by any form of filth, when it comes out, then istinja is not wajib. Wayakfil ahjar. So here the author mentioned it sufficient that a person uses the stones for istinja, even if he has water with him. Wayakfil ahjaru walau min nadirin kadamin. Even the thing that comes out is something that is not always. He gave an example of blood. Blood comes out from the private parts. Can a person use stones for istinja? Yes. وَتَعْقِيبُهَا بِالْمَاءِ أَفْضَلُ. But the best is to use stones and then ta'qibuha, meaning after that, with water. This is the best. So we combine stones and water. So today we combine tissue and water. So this is the best. Then he mentioned وَيُغْنِي عَنِ الْحَجَرِ كُلُّ جَامِدٍ طَاهِرٍ قَالِئٍ لِلنَّجَاسَةِ. So now we are going to speak about the conditions of the stones. What are the conditions of the stones that can be used for istinja? So anything that has the properties of the stone can be used as istinja. So we always give the example of tissue paper. Tissue paper today, it takes the place of al-ahjar. The Arabs in the past, I think the Arabs in the past, when we look in the Arabs in the past, they use stones. They live in the desert. Today, the societies that we live in, the design of our toilets and the flushing system, we do not use stones. It is not encouraged that we use any stones. So we always think about what is the thing that has the properties of the stone. So here the author mentioned the property of the stone is jamid, something that is solid, tahir. It must be pure, not any something any that is a filth. Qali'an lin-najasa. So it has the capacity any to remove. It has any the capacity any to remove the filth. Ghayri muhtaram. It is not something that is respected. Something that is respected, like pages any of the Quran or pages any of books any of knowledge. Likewise, any food. All these any are respected. Cannot be used as what you call it, something to for istinja. Wa mat'um, food cannot be used any for istinja. Likewise, any drinks. Kajildil mudhakka qabla dibar. Also, yani the skin any of the animal before undergoing the process of tannery, we cannot use it any for istinja. If it is an animal that can be eaten, then it is considered to be food. The skin any of the animal is considered to be food. So we cannot any be using any food any for istinja. If the animal any is something that cannot any be eaten, if it cannot any be eaten, then before tannery it is najis. It is a filth. So we cannot use any filth any for istinja. So regardless any whether the animal, the skin of an animal that can be eaten or the skin of an animal that cannot be eaten. But once any undergoes any the process of tannery, then it is pure. Can it be used any for istinja? Yes, and it can be used for istinja if the conditions any of the properties of istinja is what we mentioned, that it is solid, that it is rough in a way that it can remove any filth, then it is permissible. Then he mentioned فَلَوْ اسْتَعْمَلَ مَائِعًا غَيْرَ الْمَاءِ. If a person and he does any istinja and he use any liquid other than water, أو نجسا, or a filth, أو طرأت نجاسة أجنبية, or another any secondary filth any hits the private parts. أو انتقل ما خرج منه من موضعه أو جف أو انتشر حال خروجه. All this any the author is trying any to say that istinja is not valid. So let us any go any one by one. Number one, ista'mala ma'i'an ghayral ma. Yani a person yani use any a liquid other than water. So we mentioned it last time that water must be mutlaq. With regard any to taking ablution, with regard to bathing the obligatory bath, with regard to istinja, we can only use ma al mutlaq. We cannot use musta'mal, we cannot use mutanajjis. We cannot use used water and we cannot use filthy water. We cannot use water that is mixed any by something else that remove the quality any of the water. So I gave the example last time that if I have syrup and I put into a cup any of water, then it becomes any syrup water. So can I use any syrup water for ablution and istinja? No, because now it has lost any of its property any of pure water. So it is not any mutlaq. It is not considered to be mutlaq. So this is an example of ma'i'. Likewise, any ma'i' can be any form of liquid other than water. Any like honey, liquid, any like oil. Can we use any this any for istinja? We cannot use any for. We cannot use for istinja. So the author is saying ghayr al ma, meaning we can only use ma al mutlaq any for istinja. Aw najisan, we cannot use something that is najis for istinja. It's not valid. Aw tara'at najasatun ajnabiyya. Yani there is secondary any filth any that hits any the private parts. That hits any the private parts. Now anyway, this becomes any compulsory upon us any to use any water because now it has been mixed any by something else. أو انتقل ما خرج منه من موضعه. All this any is also situations anywhere it is compulsory for us any to use water. So not only any the istinja is not valid. So how any do we solve any this problem? We solve any this problem by using water. Can we use only stones any in these situations? No. So the author any after he speak about stones, he says that water any becomes any compulsory in this any situation. So number one, if a person any uses liquid other than water, tamam. Situation number two, he used something any that is a filth, yani to clean any himself. Situation number three, some filth hits any the part any of the najasa or the private parts. Intaqala ma khaja minhum min mawdi'ihi. Yani the filth any that comes out any from his private parts now expand any to other body parts. Tamam? Now any using water becomes compulsory. Aw jaffa, or the filth any now is dried up. Now you cannot use stones and you have to use water. أو انتشر حال خروجه وجاوز الألية. Yani the field any spread and it reaches any the body parts any outside the private parts. Like the back part any of the body. Awil hashafa. It goes away any from the head any of the penis. Ta'ayyan al-ma. So here any the author any mention. This is any the answer any to the first when he say falau ista'mala ma'yan ghayra al-ma. Now ta'ayyan al-ma yani is an answer any to that. Now water any becomes compulsory. So the author any is saying that it is not permissible for a person to use only stones in these any situations. So if these situations any occur, it is compulsory upon him any to use water. Wa in lam yujawizhuma kafal hajar. But yani if the field any does not spread away any from the private parts, then it is permissible to use only stones. So I hope any it is clear inshallah ta'ala. So maybe it's not clear any for some of you. So let me give a thing any of an example. So now any an example any a person any goes any to the toilet. A person any goes any to the toilet and he only want to use tissue. Sometimes when I get any questions, for example, in Singapore, for example, people go into the toilets where there are no water. There is no any water. Water you need to wash any ourselves. So imagine any you are in this situation. You enter any into a toilet and there is no water spray. There is no water spray. So you only see the toilet bowl. And then a person any relieve any himself any for example, and he just wants to use tissue paper. He just any wants to use tissue paper. The question any normally people ask, is it permissible if I only use any tissue paper? If I only use tissue paper. With regard any to urinating any is a bit it's simpler. And you use any tissue paper. So the conditions any of using the stones or tissue paper comes in. What are the conditions? The main any conditions any is that here the author any is saying that the filth any should not be transferred to other body parts. So for example, with regard to urinating, if the urine any for example it spread to the penis any for example, any from the head any of the penis, it goes down any to the bottom any of the penis. This is an example any he gave any earlier, where it spreads out any of the head any of the penis, the hashafa. So in this situation, it becomes wajib any to use water. It is not any permissible any to only use tissue paper, because the filth now has spread out any of the place where the filth any goes out. That is the tip any of the penis. With regard any to woman any also, if the urine, for example, any spreads any to other parts any away any from the private parts, like the hips any for example, now it becomes any compulsory any to use any water. But in a situation anywhere the filth any does not spread, so it is permissible that we only use any tissue paper. Any we are not using water at all. So the minimum any is that 3 wipes. We've got into tissue paper. There must be 3 wipes, clean wipes. There must be no traces any of urine any left, and that the urine any doesn't spread any to other any body parts any as what any we mentioned. So if these conditions any are there, then the istinja yani is valid. The istinja yani is valid. So somebody any might be asking, but how come any we don't use any water? Using any water in this situation is sunnah. Is it any wajib? No, it is not wajib. When does water any becomes wajib? This is where the author comes in. That is why the author any begins any by saying that it is permissible to use stones any for istinja without any using water. But in this situation, ta'ayyan al-ma. This is what the author is saying. Yani in this any situation, any using water becomes compulsory. And this is what any we saw any earlier. How many situations any that the author any mentioned? The author yani mentioned, number one, that if a person use other than water, yani a person and use something else, and does any the istinja, now any you have any to replace it any with pure water, because any now the istinja any is not valid, and you cannot use any stones any now. You use something any that is najis. Now a secondary field touches any your private part, khalas, any you have to use. You have any to use any water, or a secondary field and hits any your private part. Now any you cannot any use any of the stones, because this is secondary. This is not any from the field any that comes out any from your private part. Or the field any goes spread any to other body parts, any from the private part any hips spread any to your legs any, for example. Now khalas, and you cannot use stones and wipe the traces any of urine, for example, or the traces any of feces. Likewise, any with regard any to a person any removing any the bowels, yani if he can use any tissue paper and with 3 wipes he maintain any that it is completely clean without any traces, and it doesn't any spread any to other any body parts, and there is no any mixture any of any field that is secondary, tamam, no water that has been mixed. And this is also the questions and a lot of people are asking, and with regard to what? The tissue, the wet tissue. Wet tissue makes your istinja invalid. Yani if you use any wet tissue based any on the condition that is set any by the author here, automatically your istinja any becomes invalid unless any you use water after that. Some people any thought any that by using any wet tissue, what you call it, it solve any their problem. No, any it doesn't solve any your problem any. Your istinja any becomes any invalid, because wet any tissue any is a mixture any of some chemicals and water that is mixed any with the tissue paper. So if you use it, your istinja any becomes invalid, because these are secondary substances and that is mixed any with your filth. Now using water any becomes any compulsory. So what is any the way out? The way out, if you do not want to use water, avoid using wet tissue. Tamam? Avoid any using wet tissue. And wet tissue, regardless whether we are speaking about the wet tissue that is sold any in our markets, or if you take a tissue and you wet it, there is a chance that your istinja also becomes any invalid. Because why? Because if you wet any the tissue and it touches any your private parts, now any becomes, now water any has been mixed and it touches any your private part. Now any you have any to make sure that the place any is clean any by using any water. The place is clean by using water. So that is why one of the main any conditions any that our istinja is valid in these situations any is that the tissue must be dry. It should not any be mixed with anything. So if you use a dry tissue, and it must be 3 minimum, 3 wipes, clean any tissues. And once any it is clean, then only it is valid. So if your istinja is valid, your prayer any is valid. So somebody any might be thinking, but there are still any traces any of urine. Correct or not? And if you use any a dry tissue without using any water, will there be traces any of filth still at your private parts, and especially at the anus any, for example? Will there be any traces any of filth no matter how much any tissue any you use? The answer is yes. The answer any is yes. There will be traces, but this is forgiven. This is forgiven. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgives in this situation. So remember, any there are certain any situations that you are convinced any there are traces any of filth, but it is forgiven. It is forgiven. So if it is forgiven and you pray, will your prayer be valid? Yes, and your prayer any will be valid. But if it is not forgiven, meaning your istinja is not valid. If your istinja is not valid, your prayers any is not any valid. So that is why any the author any speaks any about the conditions any of using any the stones. So number one, any we spoke about the properties that the stone any must be the stones any the thing any that carry any the ruling any of the stones any must have the properties any of the stone. The tissue paper any that we are talking about any must be rough. Why any must be rough? Any because it has any the capacity any to remove any the filth. If it is any too soft, then it does not any remove any the filth. It must be dry. It must be not mixed any with anything else. It must be at least any 3 wipes. Then when we speak any about the situation any of the person, the najis any that comes out any from the body must not spread any to other any body parts. Otherwise any the istinja any is not valid, because this is something that is forgiven. If the filth spreads any to other body parts, then there is no point any of using the tissue paper, because the traces of filth any will be there. And since any this is something that is forgiven by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it is not any forgiven if it goes out any of the place anywhere it comes, where it comes from. So I hope any it is clear, inshallah ta'ala. So as a summary, we say that it is permissible to only use stones, even though there is water. This is another thing. Some people they thought that okay, you can only use stones if you don't have water. Not necessary. Not necessary. You see, this can be helpful any to people any who are desperate. For example, like I mentioned, you enter into the toilet. For example, there is no spray, water spray, right? There is no any water spray, and you are in a hurry, any for example, and you only want any to use any tissue. Islam any give you any a way out. And for example, those any who are in the army, for example, if you are in the jungle any training and you got no water, how are you going any to do any istinja? As far as the jungle any is concerned, then we can speak about stones, no issue. Because you might not have tissue paper any in the jungle, in the desert especially. If you are in the desert, some people are traveling. Their car broke down in the middle of the desert. All these are possibilities. Their car broke down in the middle any of the desert and there's no water, and you person and urinate. Now, how do you do any istinja? Now this becomes important. So now when we speak about stones, right? We spoke about stones. If there is any no stones, then we speak about, is there anything like stones? Yes, there are many things like that carry the ruling any of the stones. Even leaves, and certain types any of leaves can carry the ruling any of stones. So it's not only tissue paper. We are speaking any about anything that carries any the ruling any of the stones, as long as the properties any of the stones any are there. So we have any choice whether we want to use any only stones or tissue paper, or we want to use any water only, or we want to use both. Here the author any is saying and using both any is the best. وَيَجِبُ إِزَالَةُ الْعَيْنِ. So now the author now he speaks any about how we need to make sure that our istinja any is valid. So he say it is wajib any to remove al-ain. So let me any explain any this term. This is any important. Maybe any you want to write this down for those any first time especially hearing this. In the chapter any of Tahara, we have this term, we have al-ain and athar. We have al-ain and we have al-athar. What is any the meaning of al-ain? Al-ain any is something any that you can see any with your senses. You can see any with your senses. And if, for example, you can see the color of urine. This is ain. You can smell. You know any this substance any of filth any is there. So you know this particular thing any is present. We say this is any al-ain. But there is any another thing that you are unable any to see, but you know there is any najasa. So this also any will be mentioned any by the author any after author after this. So basically al-ain any is something any that you can observe. So the author any mentioned that with regard any to istinja, it is compulsory that we remove the al-ain. Meaning any we have any to make sure that all any of the filth any is removed in a way that you do not see any filth. You do not see any you do not see any of its properties. Then he say wastifa'u salasi masahat. Masahat any other 3 wipes. So we have to use at least 3 times. And it is with regard to a person who is using any stones. So he have to remove the al-ain, the essence of the filth with the stones. And he has to be done 3 times. It does need to be done 3 times. 3 wipes. Imma bi salasati ahjar aw bi hajarin lahu salasatu ahruf. Whether we are using 3 stones or 3 sides of 1 stone. So what the author is saying that what is compulsory is that we use it 3 times. So with regard to tissue paper, we always use the term 3 wipes, right? 3 wipes. I either from 1 tissue or 3 tissue papers. From 1 tissue, how can we imagine 1 tissue? Meaning we use different parts. If the tissue paper is a big one. So this is compulsory. Wa in anqa biduniha. Even if 1 tissue paper makes the place clean, it's still wajib to use 3 wipes. This is wajib. Fa in lam tunqi salasatu wajab al inqa. After using 3 stones or 3 wipes, there is still traces of the filth. By the color, for example, you can see feel the filth either by our hands or by the color. For example, now we have to add more. We have to add more tissue papers, add more stones. So 5 or 7. Sunnah with 5 and 7 or 9. Wa nudiba ita witr is odd number of wipes is recommended. So this is with regard to the conditions of using stones. So number 1, that the essence of the filth must be removed in a way that you do not see the filth anymore. So how do we know this? How do we know this? If you are using tissue paper, you can look at the last tissue paper that you use. So for example, a person use 3 wipes. With regard to urine, easy. Normally, when you use 3 wipes for urine, it will be clear. Meaning when you use the tissue paper, the 4th, there will be no traces of urine. So you know this is inqa, this is pure. Meaning the traces are removed. With regard to the anus, likewise. When you use the 4th tissue, you do not see any traces of filth. Now it is enough. It is valid. The istinja is valid. So meaning there is no more ain. But is there asar? Yes, asar. Asar is the remains that you do not see. This is forgiven. Al-asar is forgiven. Al-ain, with regard to what you can observe with regard to the filth, this is compulsory that you. This is compulsory that you remove. Then he mentioned وَيُنْدَبُ أَنْ يَبْدَأَ بِالْأَوَّلِ مِنْ مُقَدَّمِ الصَّفْحَةِ الْيُمْنَى. So now the author speaks about how we use stones. How we use stones. So now he given an example, if a person is wiping the anus. So it is a round thing. So where do we start? So he is speaking about using a stone that have an edge. So he say yabda'a bil awwali min muqaddami safha al yumna. So he begins with the right side. Wipe from the right side. Wa yumiruhu ila mawdi ibtida'ihi. From the right all the way then up to the beginning where he begins. Summa yaqis. Then the second wipe he goes from the left to the right. So the first one right to left to the beginning. The second wipe is from the left to the right to the beginning. Summa salis ala safhataini. Then the third one he make a round wipe. Wal masruba. So he encompasses the whole anus. So this is the demonstration of using the three wipes. So the first wipe when it starts from the right side, the second wipe when it starts from the left side, and the third one it encompasses it encompass everything. This can also with regard to the tissue paper, also it can be applied. It can be applied. So all these things will make the encompassment easier. So meaning all sides of the private part has been cleansed using the stone or the tissue paper. طيب. Then he mentioned ويجب وضعه أولا بموضع طاهر ثم يمره. So again he speaks about so many of the conditions. So a person uses the stones. He makes sure that the stones that he uses is clean. And then when he puts the stone, he makes sure that initially it is clean, then he wipes it. Wipes the private part. وَيُكْرَهُ الْإِسْتِنْجَاءُ بِيَمِينِهِ. It is makruh to use to do the istinja with his right hand. So all this we use with the left hand. فَلْيَأْخُذِ الْحَجَرَ بِيَمِينِهِ وَذَكَرَ بِشِمَالِهِ وَيُحَرِّكُهَا. So he takes the stone from the right hand and the penis in his left hand. So he doesn't touch the private part with his left hand. But when he wants to use the stone to cleanse the private part from the najis, he takes the stone in his left hand and he makes the stone touches the tip of the penis. وَيُحَرِّكُهَا. Then he moves it in a way that the tip of the penis will be cleansed by the tip of the stone. وَالْأَفْضَلُ تَقْدِيمُ الْإِسْتِنْجَاءَ عَلَى الْوُضُوءِ. The best is to do istinja before ablution. Normally this is what we do. فَإِنْ أَخَرَهُ عَنْهُ صَحَّ. But if a person takes wudu first, then he does istinja. Is it valid? Yes, it is. Yes, it is valid. أَوْ عَنِ التَّيَمُّمْ فَلَا. But with regard to tayammum, it is not valid. You cannot do tayammum if you have filth on your body. So we have to remove the filth and then we do tayammum. But with regards to wudu, you can take wudu first, then you do istinja. So when you do istinja, you must make sure that your open palms doesn't touch the private parts. Otherwise, your wudu becomes invalid. So by this, we have completed on istinja. Inshallah, later, if there's anything not clear, maybe you can ask during the Q&A. The next part, the author mentioned Babul Ghusl. Bab Ghusl. The author mentioned Yajibu ala rajuli min khurujil mani. So the author begins by speaking when does bathing or the obligatory bath becomes compulsory. Number one, if sperm comes out from the body, whether it is through wet dreams, whether it is through ejaculation, which is haram, if it's done purposefully, whether it is through after a person does any sexual intercourse. So when the sperm comes out, then it is wajib to do the bathing. وَمِنْ إِلَاجٍ حَشَفَ فِي أَيِّ فَرْجٍ كَانَ. When there is any intercourse with the the penis, and if the head of the penis enters into the female private part, regardless whether it is human beings or animals, that's what it is mentioned after this. Then bathing becomes compulsory. Qubulan or duburan, even in the anus, and if a person knows he does any sexual intercourse through the anus, bathing becomes compulsory. Likewise, the vagina. Zakaran أو أنثى. So this applies both to man and woman. Woman also have sperm that comes out from her body. Then bathing becomes compulsory. Man, woman. Walau bahimatan. Even if what you call it, a person insert the private part into an animal. That's what I mentioned earlier. It becomes wajib upon him to bathe the obligatory bath. And some of you might be wondering, but can this happen? A man having any sexual intercourse with an animal, it happens. It happens. Even nowadays, and in this age that we are living, and this the author mentioned this a few hundred years ago. So there are people out there that do some of these things, and it does happen. It does happen. أو صغيرا في صغيرة. If a person he does na'udzu billah min dhalik sexual intercourse with an infant, does bathing becomes compulsory? Yes, bathing it becomes compulsory. If a person does any sexual intercourse, and if this person is a small boy, for example, and make his penis, for example, enters into the vagina of a small child, does bathing become compulsory? Yes, bathing becomes compulsory, even though the child has not reached puberty, even though the child has not reached tamiz. Bathing becomes compulsory. So basically, the author is saying that bathing becomes compulsory in every situation of insertion of the penis in the vagina, regardless whether humans or animals. طيب. Then he mentioned وَيَجِبُ عَلَى الْمَرْأَةِ مِنْ خُرُوجِ مَنِيِّهَا. It is compulsory any woman to bathe the obligatory bath if sperm comes out from her body. وَمِنْ أَيِّ ذَكَرٍ دَخَلَ فِي قُبُولِهَا, and any form of penis that enters into her vagina, أو دبرها, or her anus, she has to bathe the obligatory bath when there is a penetration. Walau ashal, and even the penis is paralyzed and it cannot function, but the penis enters, khalas, both have to bathe the obligatory bath, the man and the woman. Aw min sabi, even any penis of a child, that's what we mentioned, she has to bathe the obligatory bath. Likewise the child, or bahima, or an animal, the penis of an animal enters into her vagina, she has to bathe the obligatory bath. And again, some people might be asking, is this possible? Yes, and this is possible. There are people out there that do sex with animals. Wa min al-hayd, with regard to woman, after the menses period is over, she has to bathe the obligatory bath. Nifas, postnatal bleeding, she has to bathe the obligatory bath. Wa khuruj al-walad jaffan, if she give birth to a child, even though there is no postnatal bleeding. So here the author mentioned jaffan, meaning there is dryness. And this is also possible. Some people say it's impossible, but it happens. It happens to Fatima Zahra radiallahu anha. That is why she is called Al-Batul. She doesn't experience menses nor postnatal bleeding. Is it compulsory to pay the obligatory bath? Yes. So that is why in our Mazhab Imam Shafi'i, we differentiate between postnatal bleeding and giving birth to a child. Giving birth to a child itself makes bathing wajib. Tamam? Even though there is no postnatal bleeding. As what the author is saying. Jafan. Yani a woman gave birth to a child and there is no postnatal bleeding. Wajib upon her to bathe the obligatory bath. وإنما يتعلق بتغييب جميع الحشفة. Now this is the condition. When does the obligatory bath becomes compulsory? When the head of the penis enters into the vagina completely. But if part of the head enters, not wajib. Half, not wajib. 3/4 not wajib. When does it becomes any wajib? The full hashafa. Hashafa any is the head any of the penis. If the whole any hashafa enters any into the vagina, then only any we say bathing any becomes any compulsory. If both are human beings, any both any the man any and the woman, regardless any whether it's halal or the haram zina, bathing any still any becomes any compulsory. Walau ra'a maniyan fi thawbi. Then the author mentioned if a person saw sperm any on his shirt, aw firash yanam fihi, or on his bedding when he sleeps on it, ma'a man yumkinu kaunuhu minhu, with the possibility that it is from him, and because he sleeps any on the bedding, or this any his clothes that he wears. Nudiba lahuma al-ghuslu wala yani yajibu. It is recommended any that both of them any bathe. Who are the both of them? Number one, any situation where he sees any sperm on his clothes. Number two is the situation of the person who sees the sperm any on his bed. It is a sunnah any that they do the obligatory bath because of the possibility that it is from them. Wala yaqtadi ahaduhuma bil akhar. And they cannot any pray any jama'ah any in this any situation. So imagine any there are two person. Number one and he saw what you call it, the sperm any on his shirt that he wears. The second one yani he saw sperm any on his any bedding. So there is any a possibility that the sperm any belongs any to one of them. Any, for example, any both any wear any does the clothes, both any sleep any on this particular bedding any, for example. So now when we say there is a possibility that this sperm any belongs any to the first, but at the same time there is a possibility that this sperm any belongs any to the second. So we say it is a sunnah any for both of them any to bathe because of the possibility, but it is not wajib. If both of them any does not any bathe, they cannot any pray any jama'ah any because of the possibility that one of them any must be in a state any of janaba. So that is why any prayer any will not any be valid any if they pray any in jama'ah. But the prayer any is valid if they pray by themselves. Because any if they pray by themselves, now any this is based any on ijtihad, because now this person any says that the most possibility that sperm is not mine, it is my friend. The second person said that there is a possibility that it's not mine. So both prayers any are valid. But if they pray any jama'ah, confirm, we say that this sperm any belongs any to one of them. So that is why any we say their prayers any is not valid in jama'ah, but their prayer is valid any if they pray any by themselves. فَإِنْ لَمْ يَنَمْ فِيهِ غَيْرُهُ لَزِمَهُ الْغُسْلُ. But if a person any sleeps any on a particular bedding, and he is the only person any that sleeps any on that bedding, and he sees sperms, now it becomes wajib any for him any to bathe. Earlier the example any is that two person any sleep. So possibility belongs any to the first, possibility belongs to the second. But if this person any is the only one any who sleeps, then it is wajib any for him any to bathe because there's no other possibilities except that it must any come out any from him. وَيَجِبُ عَلَيْهِ عَادَةُ كُلِّ صَلَاةٍ. It is wajib any that he repeat any the prayer that he prayed, where the possibility any is that the sperm any comes out any after that. لا يحتمل حدوث المني بعدها, because any he knows any that a day before there's no traces of sperm, but now any there's a trace any of sperm. So meaning the prayers any from yesterday and he must make qada. Tamam? Because there is the possibility any that the sperm any comes out any since yesterday any, for example. So how many prayers any that he has any to make? He has any to count. Lakin yundabu i'adatu ma amkana kaunuha ba'dahu. But if there is with regard any to the possibility any that the prayers any that he prayed is before he spotted any the sperm, then it is not wajib any for him any to make up any the prayers because of the possibility that those prayers are made before any of the sperm is spotted on the bedding. Wallahu alam yani bisawab. Inshallah, we stop here because of time. And we will look any other questions posted, inshallah ta'ala. So we have first question is asking, if I use tissue that is soaked with water at least 3 sets and it feels any clean after, is the istinja valid? So with regard to the istinja, what is wajib when you are using any water in this instant is that not only what you call it, the ayn has to be removed, but also the traces of the filth has to be removed. If a person uses a lot of water in a way that the place is clean and there are no any traces of filth, and likewise no ayn and no athar. Two things, huh? One is the essence of the filth, and number two is the traces of the filth. If these two are washed by the water, the water that is soaked, then it can be valid. Question number 2 is asking, soak with water is not valid, but after use 3 or more clean paper, would it be valid? See, the thing is, we have to understand 3 or more is with regard to tissue paper. And if a person is only using tissue paper, we say that it must be 3 and more. So the question we always ask that are we using water or not using any water? But since the questions are asking about using tissue paper that is soaked with water, so the answer here that it can be valid. It can be valid. It depends on whether the filth is washed off or not washed off, and if the traces of the filth are washed off, and likewise the filth itself is no more there, then it is valid. Otherwise it is not. Otherwise it is not valid. If a person, maybe I give an example, easy for us to understand. If I were to wet a tissue paper, right? I just wet any tissue paper and I wipe 3 times. So now what I'm using, I'm not washing. Am I washing with the water? No, this is wiping. So I'm just wiping using any tissue paper that is soaked with water. So does any wiping makes any istinja valid? No. If we are talking about water, it has to be washed. But again, if a person say, but I soak any tissue paper with a lot of water and I use to such an extent, then that no more traces, no more istinja. It can be valid in a way that we say now this is washing, right? If you use a lot of amount in your water, although you mix with the tissue paper, since you are using any water, what is important that it must be cleansed, not wiped. It must be cleansed because you are using water. With regard to tissue paper, it is wiped. So I hope it is clear, inshallah. So the moment you use water, remember, the moment you use water, you can forget about the ruling of the tissue paper. It doesn't matter whether it's 3 or 4 or it must be 3 or 4 or 5. The moment you use water, you have to make sure that it is washed. Clear, inshallah. The next question is asking regarding tissue paper to wipe off the filth. Minimum is 3 times. Is there a maximum number of times? There is no maximum number of times. The author mentioned that it must be cleansed. The place the traces upon there be no more filth. Meaning when you look at the tissue paper, you don't see any filth. That's enough. So it can be 5, 7, 9, 11, 13. Right? And should we keep in odd numbers? With regard to odd numbers, sunnah. It is a sunnah. That is why the author mentioned wa itar nudiba itar. Itar here is a odd number. Now, can you share how do we clean filth from carpets any or fabric. With regard any to carpets, now this is not different from istinja. All these are coming actually. With regard any if there is a filth any that enters any into the carpet, the first thing any that we have to do is we have to remove any the filth any from the carpet as much as possible. So the best way any is to use a sponge. The best way any is to use any a sponge. So I use any a sponge. I remove any the filth any from the carpet. Then I add a bit of water on it and I use a sponge again. So it is a process any of removing any the filth any from the carpet. So once any the properties any of the filth are not there anymore, then we say that this is already clean. But some people any might be thinking, but under the carpet any there's filth and filth that enters under the carpet. No, we say under, no issue. What is any important and is the surface any of the carpet and it must be the surface any of the carpet and it must be clean. So we remove any the filth any from the carpet and the surface. There are no more traces any of filth. With regard any to the smell, the taste, and the three things. The smell, the taste, any and the what is the other one? Muhammad. The smell and the taste and the uh, uh. So now then and if we say that there's no more filth. No, the question before. Can I see the question before again? One more time. With regard any to fabric, with regard any to clothes, any for example, is different, different any from carpets, because carpets usually is very difficult, if you want to remove any carpets, especially if the carpets are big. But with regard any to clothes, any what we do any is we go any to a tap any for something, and we make sure that the part any that is covered any by filth any is run by water. So we make sure that all the filth any has been washed away. If this can be done any with carpets, that is better. If a small carpet like this, then easy. You just wash any with water, khalas. But if you're talking about carpets, any big carpet like masjid in a mosque, any for example, how are you going to? You cannot be cutting any of the carpet, right? So you do not any pour water any on the field. This is any the mistake any people do, because the moment you pour water, too much water, it spreads. The najas are spread. Now the field is like this. Now becomes like this. So what we do is what I mentioned: put a bit any water and use a sponge or a towel. So remove the field one by one, again and again, again and again, until any there's no more traces any of field. Next one. For ghusl and it is bathing, must water reach the scalp any of my head? Yes, water must reach any the scalp. Otherwise, the bathing any is not valid. I have an issue with intermittent and not chronic vaginal discharge. Do I take wudu each prayer? I usually check before I salat if I still have wudu from previous any fault. This any with regard any to vaginal any discharge. If a person any has intermittent any vaginal any discharge, how does any she perform any the prayers? Number one, it depends any on the situation. If it is intermittent, not something any that is continuous, right? So what she can do any is wash any the private parts before any prayer, and then take any ablution and perform any the prayers. Take ablution and perform the prayers. So this is situation in number one. This is any in a case where vaginal discharge any is not any something any that is a lot. But if a second situation, that if it comes any on and off always, then if she fears any that if she is praying sometimes any if it comes out, then any she can take any the ruling any of salasil bowl. The ruling any of salasil bowl, that she has to perform any the prayers any in the timing, meaning now is the time of asar, for example. So she has to perform prayers in the time of asar. She has to take ablution in the time of asar. Not prayer. Prayer, of course, and you have to take in the time of the prayer. But with regard to ablution, it has to be taken after the coming any of the timing any of prayers. So washing any of the private parts, tamam, and then any put any something any that covers any the vagina so that any the discharge any is not spread any to the other body parts. And then immediately take any the ablution and perform any the prayers. If any of the vaginal discharge comes out, it is forgiven. The prayer is still valid. So these are two scenarios. Because the word intermittent we do not know. It depends any on how much any the occurrence. So if you want any to take the concession any of Salasil bowl, then all these conditions any must be there. It has to be washed, and all this must be done in that timing. You cannot take ablution before any the prayer time. You have to take ablution within the prayer time, and it has to be immediate. You have washing any of the private parts, putting any a pad, and then take any the ablution, and straight away perform any the prayers. Then you don't have to worry about anything. While any praying, there is vaginal discharge and all these things. It is any forgiven. Toy. With regard any to checking any whether you still have wudu, if you are in a situation anywhere always any discharge and it comes out, then you have to take ablution for every fard. You cannot keep your wudu. You cannot keep any your wudu. Now, unless any you are convinced any that there is no discharge, then your wudu is still valid. Next one. For checking clean any from haid, does the discharge any need to be white totally or is slightly any yellow? Is considered any clean. So with regard any to menses and in the mazhab al-Imam Shafi'i, there are slight differences any amongst any the madhahib. With regard any to the mazhab al-Imam Shafi'i, is that there is no more discharge. Totally any no discharge. So meaning any if a person puts a cotton, there is nothing any on the cotton. So this is the thing any that a woman any can be ensured that there is no more menses. So, but as long as there is discharge, then the menses any is still considered any to be any ongoing. If my clothes any has my sperm any last night and I have done any my ghusl, is the sperm considered najis and can I pray in it? Sperm any is not najis. If you pray any with the sperm any on it, the prayer any is valid. But sometimes any sperm can mix any with madi. It becomes any mutanajis. It becomes any mutanajis. So it is better to avoid. It is better any to wash off any the sperm, even though sperm any is not considered to be a filth. But because of the possibility that it might any mix any with madi, it is recommended any that we wash first before we perform our prayers. But otherwise, any prayers any is valid with regard to the sperm. Normally, after birth, the nifas starts. In this case, should the woman wait until nifas is over and then make ghusl, or make ghusl for the birth first and then another ghusl at the end of the nifas? The way is to make ghusl at the end of the nifas, not any after any the birth. After the birth, any do not any do your ghusl. Even you do ghusl, any your ghusl will not be valid because there is still nifas. There is still nifas. So you make any ghusl any at the end any of the nifas, not any after birth. Ayo. How do we do ghusl any for someone else? For example, you mentioned the baby needs to do the wajib bath if the private part enters. So now any the baby any is in the state any of janaba. So what can be done any is that when he or she any reach any the age any of tamyiz, then she can make any the intention any of the obligatory bath. Meaning she or she any is in a state any of janaba. But because any intention any is not valid any from an infant, it has to be at the time any of tamyiz. Can you do nafil any extra any udhiyah? Udhiyah any sunnah, yani you can do as much. If yes, can a few people share a small animal, sheep? With regard to sheep, it cannot be shared. One person, one sheep. But if you regard any to the cow or camels, seven people can share. Number 3, can you do this type of nafil and udhiyah before your sunnah muakkada udhiyah? You see, with regard to udhiyah, we mentioned that it's sunnah. it is any a sunnah. So you can choose any whether you want to do for yourself any one sheep or you want to share with others any or with a camel any or a cow. Is it obligatory to do first any your sunnah any udhiyah and your nafil? I think the questioner is confused any between the term any sunnah and nafil. Actually, it means the same. Sunnah muakkada yani is confirm any sunnah. Nafil any is considered any to be sunnah. With regard any to udhiyah, it is any we can say it is sunnah muakkada because it is a confirm and the Prophet sallallahu did any sunnah udhiyah. At the same time, it is nafil. At the same time, it is a sunnah. So not any to be confused any with these terms. So at the end of the day, doing any udhiyah any is sunnah, regardless whether any you want to share or you want to do by yourself. Clear, inshallah. And it is not obligatory. Udhiyah is not obligatory unless any you make a vow. Then only any it becomes obligatory. Aywa. How to clean muddy on garment? Cleaning any body using water. As long as the traces of muddy has been washed off, it is valid. Is pouring a few drops of water and rubbing and a few drops of water enough? No, and it's not enough. Yani if you pour a few drops in your water because muddy yani is not najis mukhaffafa. Mukhaffafa, you can do that. But this is mutawassita. This is any a type any of najis any that is a medium one. So it has to be washed off. The traces any must be washed off. It is difficult any to clean, especially when outside. So with regard any to muddy, it has any to be done any with what do you call it? With washing. Washing any of the part where it is affected any by the muddy. Now, so there is all any for the questions. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ربنا تقبل دعاءنا انك انت السميع العليم وتب علينا انك انت التواب الرحيم واختم بالصالحات اعمالنا واجرنا الله يكرم بفضل سبحان ربك بالعزه عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين تقبل الله منكم السلام عليكم ورحمه الله وبركاته. Next week any there is no class because of Eid al-Adha. Inshallah in 2 weeks time we'll see you inshallah. Jazakumullah khair.